Signing establishes the Emmett Till, Mamie Till Mobley National Monument. At a time when there are those who seek to ban books, bury history, we're making it clear, crystal clear. The reason the world saw what Mrs. Till Mobley saw was because another hero in this story, the black press. No, I'm serious. Jet Magazine, the Chicago Defender, and other newspapers and radio announcers who told the story were unflinching in the bravery with which they told that story, making sure America saw what they saw. The proclamation I'm signing establishes.
Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known. And yes, what quite an event at the White House, history-making event at the White House yesterday. I was there. Dr. Ben Chavis, our president and CEO, was there as the president signed a proclamation designating some historic sites to Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Mobley Till. And he saluted once again the black press. A theme throughout his presidency has been recognizing the importance of the black press, certainly in history and today. So we'll talk a little bit more about that this morning, as well as an eyewitness to Malcolm X's assassination has spoken out for the first time at a news conference yesterday and said what he observed proves that the federal and New York City governments were involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. We'll have details on that also this morning. And smoke from more than 1,000 wildfires burning across Canada has now come back over the northern U.S., bringing poor air quality and pollution that threatens residents' health to northern U.S. cities, including Chicago, Minneapolis, and Detroit. We're going to talk about that as the 20 most polluted cities in the world is ranked. And as noted, President Biden signed the proclamation yesterday. We'll get into that. LeBron James' 18-year-old son, Bronny, is recovering this morning in a Los Angeles area hospital after suffering cardiac arrest yesterday. We'll bring you up to date on his health. And also from the White House yesterday, the Biden administration's plan to try to force private insurance companies to offer the same coverage for mental health services as they do for physical health services, improving upon a well-known hole in America's healthcare system. We will talk about that this morning with Austin Cooper.
Good morning,
Hey,
brother.
Austin.
Good morning, brothers. How are you, man?
How's it going?
Okay, always good to see you and to be on the show.
Yeah, now see you representing looks like who you representing?
The only fraternity, the only real fraternity,
The only
Alpha
real
Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
uh, boy, oh boy. I tell you, they get on here, they start fighting over these
I know.
fraternities. Who's the best? Who's the and in this case, it's not about the best. And in Austin's mind, it's the only.
the first and the only.
Wow. So 6 decades, Austin, after the assassination of Malcolm X, a man who witnessed his death has come forward. In a press conference with attorney Ben Crump yesterday, Mustafa Hassan, previously known as Richard Jones, was standing with Malcolm X on the day that he was assassinated. Multiple photographs and videos from the day show Hassan, who is now 84, attending to Malcolm X after he was shot. And despite Hassan's presence, law enforcement officials failed to interview him. And Ben Crump and his co-counsel, Ray Hamlin, said law enforcement was behind the murder of Malcolm X. This is the first time that somebody has really come out with such authority and has said, look, here's the eyewitness, and this is what really happened.
Well, I'm so pleased that this, brother in the twilight of his life, decided to share and to confirm what many of us always knew, that not only with the assassination of Medgar Evers, there was federal and local or state government involvement, but also with the assassination of some of our other leaders during that period of time. I also believe that the government was involved in the assassination of, for example, Dr. King. I mean, how did James Earl Ray, shoot Dr. King and get out of the country? He was arrested in London
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 months after Dr. King's assassination. So going back to Brother Malcolm, I'm not surprised. And if we could talk to Brother Malcolm, I think that he would also say that I'm also not surprised that that there was a concerted attempt at least 2, possible 3 levels of government to take me out.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Dr. King's assassination. Even when you look at John F. Kennedy's
Yeah,
assassination,
yeah.
right place, right time. I mean, in the case of James Earl Ray in Memphis,
Hmm.
how could he have known, when Dr. King would be so
Hmm.
vulnerable?
Exactly.
The Kennedy situation where whenever as a president, even back then, roll with the top down like
Top
that,
down,
such an
exactly,
opening.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
And every 10, 15, I don't know how many years, well, not, it's like every 5 years, the current president of the United States has the option of opening up all of the files surrounding the assassination, November 22nd, 1963, of President John F. Kennedy. And they released them bit by bit. But several years ago, President Trump had the opportunity to finally open up the remaining files. He chose not to. And last year, if I've got my story correct, President Biden also had the opportunity, and I think he opened a few more files. But President Kennedy has been dead. November this year will be 60 years.
Hmm.
Why not open all of the files unless
Yeah.
it's going to prove that the federal government was involved in the assassination of an American president?
Yeah, you see here, Ilyasa Shabazz speaking. I spoke to Ilyasa a couple of years ago in New York, and the one thing about Malcolm X's daughters, he had 6 daughters.
Hmm.
They had a couple of them have passed away in recent years, unfortunately, but they have been vigilant on this since they were old enough to be vigilant on
Hmm.
this, and
Hmm.
to see son who was there. And that's the thing, Austin. That you have a guy who was there, and not only there, but he was a handler of Malcolm X. He said that he heard police officers from the NYPD ask one another if Thomas Hagen, previously known as Talmadge X Hayer, was quote unquote with us after he fatally shot Malcolm X. He believes this means police knew Malcolm X's life was in danger, but didn't act
Didn't do
quickly
anything.
to protect him, and
Hmm.
wrongly arrested 2 men in connection with his death. We know that those 2 men were finally exonerated.
Yeah, and you think of the courage of some of our leaders who died during that time period. Malcolm X, Dr. King, Medgar Evers, men and women who knew that the cloud of death was hanging over them for the remaining years of their life and was getting lower and lower and lower. And yet they kept the faith. They
Mhm.
kept their courage. They stayed steady to the mission of the emancipation of our people. I know the movie Malcolm came out years ago, but there was also another movie that came out on Netflix and a few years ago. And in that movie, you see Malcolm X backstage working on his notes that Saturday morning before he went walking to the stage of the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, and he looks like he has a sense of pending death.
Mhm.
For a moment in the show, and I have no doubt it was, this is what he really felt right before the assassination. He just had a, a determined but
Resolute.
resolute look that
Mhm.
when I walk onto the stage, I
Mhm.
may not come back.
Well, it's so interesting too because I agree with you. Think about Martin Luther King the night before he was assassinated. What was his speech? I may
Hmm.
not get there
Hmm.
with you.
Yep,
You
yep,
know,
yep, yep, yep.
um, so I think you're probably right. There is this with these men. It was a sense of okay, I've reached that
I've reached
point.
the end. Yep, yep,
Yep.
yep. Hmm.
And again, Ilyasa, she said, we want justice to be served because I think what history has recorded is inaccurate. We want the truth to be known, and we want the history books to reflect that truth. And we know it's such an important statement she made in the sense that banning books,
Thank
the
you,
president
thank you.
talked about that yesterday at the White
Hmm.
House,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and this idea of changing American history, particularly Black history.
Hmm. And I mean, who would have thought that any state in America, much less my state of birth, Florida and Texas and others, but anywhere in America in 2023, July 2023, we will be talking about banning books. I mean, I thought education is about expanding your mind. Reading about reading points of view that you may not agree with. even
Hmm.
points of view regarding history. But that is, to me, is what real education is. Learn to think on your own. And this is just beyond beyond crazy.
Yeah, Dr. Thomas Braxton Jones Jr. writes in that it's unfortunate that it took so long for the truth to come out. This is another example why the African Americans need to form a coalition to unite and start to mobilize to not only investigate but to stop the discrimination and racism toward
Hmm.
Black
Hmm.
people.
And I tell you, if there is, I doubt that there is, unfortunately, but if there is anyone
All
alive
right, so check this out.
today,
These are
if there's anyone alive today who is
Scottsboro boys.
who had been involved in the assassination of Dr. King or Malcolm or Medgar or any of our leaders, take them out of the nursing homes, take them out of their homes, take them out of whatever facility they are in, and let them finish
Let me say
their
that again. The
remaining
whole
days in prison.
Well, I remember you saying that too about Carolyn Dunham Bryant,
Absolutely.
the woman who made those false allegations against Emmett
Hmm.
Till,
Hmm.
and she happened to die in a nursing home just recently.
Hmm.
And I don't think many people would push back against that, Austin, at all. Quinn Durrett, Mr. Durrett says, "How do we protect our brothers and sisters that look to uplift our community?"
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's a question that's
Good question.
been
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there.
Out there and will remain out there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And David Youngblood says we don't call out the barbarism of this country. It is sanitized history. Hmm. Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and it's unfortunate too. And I mentioned Ilyasa, but to see the faces of the children, even like King's children, you see Bernice on social media a lot, and Martin the Third. He's friend of the Black press. He comes around a lot. You see them, and you realize the hole is left in their life.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I've had some dealings with Martin. I don't believe I've ever met any of Malcolm X's children. I was blessed to meet Mrs. Betty Shabazz several years before her untimely death. But it's true, you talk to these people, and they have gone on with their lives. But there is, I mean, we have all lost parents, so there is always that permanent void. But to me, it's a bit different when you lose your parent to violence, when you are, in the public eye and suffer the death of a family member or a parent. I just think that takes your pain and your grief to to another level. I'll never forget years ago when I was a lobbyist for Mayor Dinkins up in New York. And by City Hall, there was an area where a lot of folks from City Hall and from the district attorney's office would gather, like an outdoor court area next to
Hmm.
the finance building, 1 Center Street. And I would often see John F. Kennedy Jr. there. They're sitting. Sometimes he'd be with his friends, but oftentimes he was just by himself, trying to be incognito. Kind
Yeah.
of sitting in a corner, and folks would inevitably recognize this is the president's son. And I remember on more than one occasion them going over to him. He's always very gracious, Stacy. He would always stand and take a picture, engage you in conversation. That's probably saw maybe 15, 20 times. Never saw him act annoyed when a stranger approached him. But oftentimes, when it was older individuals, they would always bring up the assassination. They would
Hmm.
always say, I remember exactly what I was doing when receiving the news of your father's assassination. And he would,
As if he
yeah,
wanted to hear that.
exactly. And he would always, smile and, and nod. But that just goes to, that void
Yeah.
that you can't, because you constantly be reminded of it when you were when you're in the public eye.
Yeah, Bobby Henry says the fact that our leaders then knew that the possibility of death was imminent, they continued to speak truth to power, and
That's
now it
right.
seems like many are bought off for pennies.
Yep.
That's a statement.
That's a statement. And Bobby, unfortunately, that's a very truthful and on point, statement. Some of these folks, and I won't name, who proclaim to be our leaders. You wonder how would they have withstood the test of time, having the cloud of death. I mean, think about this. Dr. King, literally from the time he became a public figure during the Montgomery bus boycott, for the next 13 years, was a target for death. The same thing with Malcolm X. Medgar Evers. It's just it's a special kind of courage
Yeah.
and commitment and dedication.
Well, and finally, Dr. Jones Jr. says we need to bring back the village mindset. We have to be about bringing unity back to the Black communities across this nation. We have to clean up our backyard and hold our Black leaders accountable to restore our faith and trust in one another. And Bobby concludes by saying, shouldn't a leader know that to lead may cost them their life?
That's right.
Real interesting statements. But again, the headline here is that a eyewitness to the assassination of Malcolm X is now squarely produced or come forward to say that it was law enforcement behind the death of Malcolm X. So
Wow.
really interesting. And of course,
That's
America's Black Attorney General, Ben Crump, is on the case. And
That's
that
right.
in itself says a lot too, because Crump is really doing the work. People criticize him a little bit, saying that wherever the money is, he is, but that's not necessarily the truth. Money comes, yes. However, I've not found a cause in which you can accuse him of, like other lawyers, ambulance chasing.
Mhm, mhm.
So
And again, he brings much needed attention to these types of issues. I've had my issues off and on with the Reverend Al Sharpton, but you got to give him credit where credit is due. He is able to shine a spotlight on issues that might otherwise be swept under the rug were it not for his efforts, Attorney Crump's efforts, and more importantly, the Black press.
yeah, I think Crump stands head and shoulders above Sharpton in my in my estimation, as far as the motives are concerned. But that's a whole nother
That's a whole
story.
nother show. That's a whole nother show.
Austin, the smoke from more than 1,000 wildfires burning across Canada has wafted over the northern U.S., bringing poor air quality and pollution that threaten residents' health. And we thought this was over with, and it seems like it's still in the early stages. Chicago, Minneapolis, and Detroit now are targeted by the pollution next, with temperatures soaring, the air quality lowering. It's just it's an insufferable situation.
Well, if you didn't believe in climate change before, what's stopping you from believing in climate change now? I mean, what else could you attribute these conditions to? I honestly got comfortable, living on the East Coast, thinking that this was a West Coast problem. The smoke and the
The
fires. And
smog.
then 2 or 3 months ago, or 2 months ago, it's been at least 2 months now, there are raging fires in Canada that are moving all the way down, the East Coast. Even now, yesterday I was out and it was very hot and it's like a film in the air, a haziness.
Yeah.
And I say, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I am concerned about the long term health effects on
Well,
all of us inhaling
it's
this.
1,090 active fires right now in Canada, with they
Wow,
saying more than
I didn't know that.
670 of them.
1,090.
1,090, with 670 deemed to be out of control. You have American firefighters still going up to Canada to try and help with that situation. The bulk of the country's wildfires are burning in British Columbia, where more than 460 fires are ongoing. So it's a bad, bad situation. The U.S. National Weather Service, the National Weather Service in the U.S., as I say, issued air quality alerts for millions of people across Michigan, parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. We see a blanket of hazy skies that's following a belt of Canadian wildfire smoke stretched across the U.S. So it is. It's been a horror show.
Yeah, and a month or so ago, I was walking in downtown, walking up K Street, going to a meeting downtown DC, and the haze was so thick with the heat that despite the uncomfortableness of it all, I pulled out I always keep a one of the surgical mask in my bag. I
Mhm.
put that on, even though I was walking outside.
Yeah, and here we thought that once COVID
COVID was
finally got a hold of COVID,
to
no
the
more
period
masks.
behind us. Exactly,
Uh,
exactly. No, I still keep my mask in my car. Still, uh, concerned about COVID. In fact, I was just asking my pharmacist the other day because it's been on. I've got all the shots. I don't even know how many shots there are, but whenever they announce, I'm in line. And he said that he expects another shot to come out sometime late summer or early fall.
mm. Well, like we figured it would be like the flu shots,
Like the
right?
flu shot. Yep.
Goodness gracious. Mike V says, as Black folk, we care about climate change too. We care about clean water and clean air too. We need to be at the forefront of these conversations at the UN or with Special Envoy John Kerry. Um,
But
yeah.
I was in I want to say Botswana, 2 weeks ago, and was sitting with some folks around dinner. We got on the topic of COVID deaths in Africa versus here in the United States and other parts of the world. And yeah, there are some parts of Africa that took hits, COVID cases, and in particular deaths, but it was nothing. The numbers don't even come close to comparing to the loss of life that we had here in the United States. I think here in the
Wow.
United States, we had 1.2, 1.3 million deaths. I don't know what the number is in Africa. And I asked this former ambassador why. And he said, here in Africa, we're used to dealing with all sorts of conditions, malaria. And his
Mhm.
belief is that the bodies of those raised on the continent, develop some sort of an immune system. Some people who are in remote villages of Africa, they are so far away from main population that they
Mhm.
don't have to worry about getting COVID. So it was an interesting discussion comparing the impact of the pandemic on two continents.
David Youngblood says they had less deaths from COVID because they didn't interact with us. And um, Paris Brown says African Americans do care about the environmental change and sustainability. The Baltimore Times gets lots of engagement around those issues.
Mhm. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and our buddy
Caleb.
Kayla Benjamin had been on board with the Washington Informer for a little more than a year now. She's our environmental writer, folks. For those
What
who
a
don't know,
job.
and what an incredible job that she is doing. And to David's point, highlighting that climate change is an issue for white folk and black folks do indeed care about climate change.
I think
So if you haven't
Kayla
read
just
any of our articles, read some of Kayla's compelling stories.
Oh, yes, in the Washington Forum. She just won an award from the NMPA during the
Okay.
conference,
Okay.
and deservedly so.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
job that Kayla's done, we have learned so much about the environment, about climate change, and everything else since Kayla has come aboard with
Mm-hmm.
the Washington
Mm-hmm.
Informer. Great
Yeah.
job there, and like Austin said, keep reading the Informer, Kayla Benjamin, and you'll be educated.
You'll see why. Exactly.
Yep. So yesterday, Big day in Washington at the White House, recognizing the country's painful racial history and honoring the legacy of Emmett Till. President Joe Biden signed a proclamation designating a national monument spanning 2 states to memorialize, I should say, Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley. Um, you know, it was quite the scene. Austin, I know you watched. um, you decided to watch from home instead of joining us over there. We wish you'd have came over.
Me too. I wish I had been there, but Stacy, you were there, so I can only imagine how being there, touched your heart and the hearts of everybody who was there. I wasn't there, but I could feel it sitting right here where I am now and looking at my television straight ahead. Every time you hear the name Emmett Till, every time I hear the name Emmett Till, there is just a painful, twist, shock that goes through my heart because you automatically remember the inhumanity of it all. You remember that Carolyn Bryant, the grocery store owner who said that he wilted at her or flirted with her or made inappropriate
Yeah.
comments, several years ago, lied, and none of this happened. Yet she lived a full life. She died, I think you just said before we went on air, in a nursing home, and if she wasn't in her 90s, she was certainly in her mid to late 80s.
Hmm.
Uh, keep in mind, I think there were 3 men who were put on trial for their murders. They were acquitted after less than an hour, maybe 45 minutes, by an all white male jury. And some of them joked to reporters afterward. The only reason it took us that long was because someone had to go out and get us some more Coca-Colas.
Hmm.
Um, and, you think of the Reverend Wheeler, who was a teenager in the bed next to Emmett Till, who is now a preacher of of the gospel, but has carried that pain, that memory with him for all of these years. I mean, it's just a painful story that needs to be told, and retold.
Yeah, I keep thinking about, and not so much because I mean, this is great that the president continues to give, and rightly so, credit to the Black press. But I keep thinking about what he said, and he emphasized about the bravery of Emmett Till's mother. And if you watched at all, if you didn't watch, it's not a long ceremony. I think C-SPAN still has it up. You
Hmm.
can go back and
Hmm.
watch it. But he really talked about um, leaving that casket open and what it took for her to leave that casket open, because she wanted everybody to see what she saw. She wanted everyone to see what they did to her 14-year-old son, and how vital that was, that people really saw it. Because the president talked about people not wanting to open a casket or things of that nature, but in this case, he highlighted, and he kept on. You could see that he felt it. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
that this idea of leaving that casket open, with the way that Emmett Till's body was so mangled,
Hmm.
and he obviously he was beyond recognizable, and what they had done to him, and for a jury, this is why sometimes it's hard to appeal to people's humanity,
Yes.
because if
Yes.
that did not that jury, like you said, it was only out for an hour because somebody wanted a Coke,
Hmm.
but to see that, and they saw that,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's just unimaginable to be so without feeling.
I have family members who live in Chicago, and one of my aunts, my aunt Ernie, as a child, her parents took her down to, I don't remember the name of the church, but she says to this day she still remembers looking down and being shocked, and said he didn't even look, his face didn't even look, human. He had
Right.
hands, he had legs, but he didn't look human. Keep in mind that he was at the bottom of the Tallahatchie River, a 14-year-old kid, for at least a month, probably longer, with a one of those uh, cotton gins, tied around his neck. These men, these animals, these racist animals, uh, castrated him, cut off his nose, pulled out his tongue. And Mrs. Till says that she remembers, just standing there in shock at the morgue and looking and saying to herself, looking at one side of his skull and to see the light on the other side of his skull, and said to herself, "My God, after all of this, you still had to shoot him." But little did she know that by making that, split decision, I mean, think about it. For Mrs. Till, that was a split decision that she had to make: either keep this casket closed or open it. But in that moment, she changed the course of American history.
Yeah. She really did change really ignited the civil rights movement. And
I mean, look at this. Look
that,
at this.
yeah, wow, it's just wow. What can you say about that? And the vice president, her part was really poignant as well. She says our history as a nation is born of tragedy and triumph, of struggle and success. That is who we are, and as people who love our country, as patriots, she said, we know that we must remember and teach our full history, even when it is painful,
Amen.
especially
Amen.
when it is painful.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and she goes on to say that there are those in our nation today who would prefer to erase or even rewrite the ugly parts of our past, those who attempt to teach that enslaved people benefited from slavery, those who
Hmm.
insult us
Hmm.
in an attempt to gaslight us, who try to
Hmm.
divide our nation with unnecessary debates. And then she concluded by saying, let us not be seduced into believing that somehow we will be better if we forget. We will be better if we remember. We will be
Exactly.
stronger if we
Exactly.
remember.
Exactly. If we forget, these atrocities, which in some areas are still happening, will continue. They will increase, especially under the current political environment. I mean, as graphic as those photos and as painful as this story is, why shouldn't, young white children in my birth state of Florida and Mississippi and Georgia and otherwise not learn the story of Emmett Till?
Yeah. Yes. And
And I sincerely applaud President Joe Biden for, last year he signed the Emmett Till
yes.
anti lynching bill. I mean, think about it.
He also
In
remember
20
too, they screened the movie Till in the White
At the White
House.
House, exactly, exactly. But think about it. Up until last year, last summer, when 2022, when President Biden signed the bill, it was legal to lynch people.
How about that?
I mean, last year. I mean, up until last year, it was
Right.
legal to lynch people. It took President Joe Biden to sign a bill that said you cannot lynch people.
Mhm.
And a concern I have with these two, monuments to Emmett, one in Chicago, and I'm assuming the other one will be in,
It's three
you know,
altogether. Yeah.
where's the third? I know Chicago, Tallahatchie, and where?
Two of them are in Mississippi.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But my concern, particularly in Mississippi, is what steps are going to be taken to protect,
Right.
to guard these monuments, because we know that for close to 20 years, right by the Tallahatchie River, there has been a sign, a purple and white sign, almost like a highway sign,
Hmm.
that said this is where Emmett Till's body was recovered on such and such a date. And recently as 2 years ago, people were still shooting at it getting out of their cars and opening fire. I mean, that sign has been replaced. That monument has been replaced at least 3 or 4 times,
Yeah.
and and maybe more.
Yeah.
So, what steps are going to be taken to protect these two, memorials to
Mhm.
young Emmett and his mother?
Yeah. Bobby Henry says the pain and ugliness of the hideous act of racist violence still haunts us today. And yet there are those like Ron DeSantis who want to whitewash it out of history.
Yep, yep,
Um,
yep.
David
Agreed.
Youngblood, to your point, Austin says that they'll now protect these monuments with federal officials. So and it's a federal monument, right? So there are federal penalties associated with any type of defacing of a federal monument. It'd be like defacing one of the Smithsonian's. So we will see.
I don't, I'm thankful for that, but I'm still a bit on edge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
skeptic.
these are
Yeah.
going to be federal monuments, but it's not like it's going to be the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier,
Hmm.
where, or the Washington, the Lincoln Memorial, where you have guards walking by. I mean, I hope, but I just don't think that these three memorials, yes, they're going to be federal properties, but I just don't know what is going to stop some redneck racists
Well, it's a
from doing
shame
that.
too that we are even have to consider that, right? Um,
Yes,
this
yes.
guy, this guy, this innocent young teenager, brutalized enough. I mean, why would somebody want to go back and inflict even more pain on such innocence?
And where did the people who shoot up and desecrate these monuments, learn it from? They learn it from home.
Mhm.
Hatred is taught in the homes.
Greer suggests that for protection of these monuments, call the fruit of Islam.
Absolutely.
I don't think even the supremacist, the so-called supremacists, want to mess with those guys.
Hmm.
I mean, no, they don't. Oh boy. Well, this morning, some good news for LeBron James and his family. Bronny James is reportedly doing much better after cardiac arrest, going into cardiac arrest yesterday. He was unconscious and rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and taken to the ICU, where doctors said, "Hey, this was a cardiac arrest." He's only 18 years old. He had announced that he plans to play basketball at the University of Southern California, and that's where the medical emergency unfolded. Scary, scary, scary moment, Austin.
Yeah, when I first heard this, I think I first saw it on Twitter, and then started seeing it on MSNBC or whatever I was watching yesterday. And I literally stopped in my tracks and I said, Lord, please watch over this, this young brother. Um, it immediately took me back to the young brother playing for the Buffalo Bills.
Yes,
I mean, the
Hamlin.
timing, yeah, yeah. I mean, the timing was just right. And you listen to, doctors who were giving their analysis. And when you go into cardiac arrest, I mean, you literally have seconds, minutes to administer aid, or it's all over.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just that quick.
Yeah.
Had he been in a nightclub, had he been in school, we might be talking about a very different and painful and tragic story today. But thank God he is okay. Look like he's going to make a full recovery, and hopefully we will see him back on the court soon.
Yeah, I wonder what that might do going forward. You mentioned the Buffalo Bills player, Hamlin, Damar Hamlin, I believe is his name.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and he's coming back. Um, and Bronny James is 18 years old.
Yeah, you know, I gotta be, I'm not a huge football fan. I mean, I'll watch it, but I don't have to watch it. But to me, it's just a very barbaric contact sport.
Hmm.
I used to be skinny and have hair, and the only sports I played was, tennis, and still play.
I never
You
did see
you
any of your baby
you
pictures.
stay on that side of the court. I'll stay on this side of the court, and I don't want anybody running into me intentionally. But seriously, I can't help but feel that what Demar went through was a direct result of a hit.
Hmm.
The helmet just hitting him at the right tender spot of
Yeah.
his heart and causing this. So, I guess a part of me feels like I have more reservations of him
Yeah.
returning to the field than I do of Bronny James. But I'm no medical expert, so
Hmm.
I wish them both the best with the decision. But I mean, to be how old is Demar? You remember?
Oh, he's in his
In
20s.
his 20. I
Yeah.
mean, Bronny is 18.
Yeah.
18 years old and going to cardiac arrest. I mean,
Yeah. That's
I
scary.
mean that is serious. I mean, it's bad enough at any age, certainly in the 20s, but
Yeah.
18 years old, and he appears to be in good shape. I mean, if there a family history of heart issues, you know, does he have? I mean, he needs to be. I'm sure he is being thoroughly examined, and he and his family
Yeah.
will make the right decision, taking
Yeah.
into account medical advice given.
Yeah, and because I know that at least the speculation was that the plan was for him to play no more than 2 years at USC before going into the NBA draft, because his father wants, before he retires, wants to play alongside him
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah.
NBA. And so it's something that I'm pretty sure, I mean, they are and will be weighing the whether or not that's going to happen or not. I mean, you got to, at 18, uh he's got such a long life ahead of him, at
Hmm,
least
hmm. Yeah, yeah, and you know, looking at him, he appeared to be in good shape. I'm sure he's working out. I'm sure he's eating well. But despite all of that, he still went to cardiac arrest. I told you I'm a big fan of tennis. One of my childhood heroes was with Arthur Ashe. Arthur would have been 80 years old on July 6th, and he died in February 1993 at the age of 49 from AIDS that he received. 6 or 7 years ago, he had a massive heart attack. I mean, again, Arthur was older, in his mid 30s, but in good shape, a professional tennis player. And despite eating well, despite exercising every day, despite the training to stay on tour, suffered a massive heart attack. So when you get these wake up calls, you have to take them seriously.
yeah.
And I hope and I'm sure that Bronny will, and they will make whatever uh, lifestyle adjustments have to be made.
Yeah, Southbound 3000 is asking that, do you think this is a wake-up call for HBCUs? Are we in a place to handle a situation like this?
Very good point. Very good
Yeah.
point. I mean, it's one thing to go into cardiac arrest on a professional football field,
Hmm.
and thank God those guys were there to help our young brother up in Buffalo, over the Buffalo Bills. But thank God, USC is a top school, so thank God. But that's a very good point. Are
Yeah.
our HBCUs equipped and ready, and are the trainers trained to react in a manner like this? I think I saw yesterday where one of Bronny's teammates, or was it another young player, also suffered a similar incident, collapsing on the court. And
Mm.
again, I mean, again, instances like this, you can't even wait for the ambulance to come,
Right.
paramedics to come. I mean, you got to act now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With the training staff or whomever is, you know, medical expert, whoever's there, medical
Mhm,
personnel
mhm.
has to, like you said, act immediately. And Power 96 brings out that this will be, if it happens, Brownie and his father teams up. It would be great. He says he still has pictures of Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr. on the same field at the same time. In fact, Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. Played together for the Seattle Mariners and homered in the same game.
I had
That
forgotten
was
that.
that was interesting. Got a statement. I want to. Bobby Henry wanted me to read this statement going back to our previous story. He says the National Newspaper Publishers Association, the Black Press of America, denounces the ludicrous assertions that blacks benefit from slavery. Benefit and slavery cannot coexist in the same sentence, and expect there can be any misinterpretation as to its intent. The Black press will encourage any educator to refrain from ever teaching something so obviously insulting. The Black press will encourage any organization of consciousness to back and promote an educator resistance effort. Participate in court actions that challenge the guidelines in the courts, school boards in Florida, and wherever it surfaces. Recognizing that these initiatives quickly move to other states to be emulated, we support any effort to move beyond talk to action to eradicate its expansion in our country. And that is from the NNPA chair, Bobby Henry Sr., who is the publisher of the West Side Gazette.
Amen, amen, and amen.
Yeah,
Well
interesting.
stated, well stated. And again, to think that Bobby and we in the black press have to entertain such nonsense, much less issue a statement like this in July 2023 is painful, and it's embarrassing, and it is insulting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And moving on to mental health, Austin, President Joe Biden's administration plans to try to force private insurance companies to offer the same coverage for mental health services as they do for physical health services, which improves upon a well known hole in America's healthcare system, according to the White House. The new policy is part of a broader push by Biden to improve mental health care in the United States. The new regulations would still need to go through a public comment period, will require insurers to study whether their customers have equal access to medical and mental health benefits and to take remedial action if necessary. It's called the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, which requires that insurers provide the same level of coverage for both mental and physical health care through the administration and advocates, though I should say the administration's and advocates argue insurers' policies restrict patient access. So they're pushing, which I think is a great policy if it can get
Absolutely.
through.
Yeah, I mean, the key statement there being if it can get through. Again, another round of applause for President Biden, for the Biden-Harris administration, for addressing an issue, addressing a hole in our healthcare system that should have been addressed years ago. I mean, look at how many people are suffering from mental health. I mean, hell, this was an issue before the pandemic,
Yep.
and I have no doubt that during that 3 or 4 year period of the pandemic, and we're not completely out of it, but we're certainly, I think I can safely say, the worst is behind us. But think about how people's mental health was impacted during COVID. I've said before on this show. I mean, I had mental health issues, during COVID. Being in this apartment by myself and not being able to interact with people. And think about the direct linkage, Stacy, between mental health and all of these, mass shootings
Yeah.
that we're experiencing on a, almost a daily basis. So if it can get through, because I'm sure that the health agencies or the insurance companies, health insurance companies are going to push back. I'm sure that the GOP members of certainly the House
Yep.
and most likely, several in the Senate are going to push back. But again, kudos to the administration for putting something on the table, because this is a huge gap
Yeah.
in our healthcare system.
Yeah, the Biden-Harris administration said it wants to address issues such as insurers enabling nutritional counseling for diabetes patients, but making it more difficult for those with eating disorders or not having enough mental health providers in their providers network, forcing subscribers to pay higher out-of-pocket fees for needed help. So they said by measuring the outcomes, it will force the insurers to make modifications to come into compliance with the new law.
Okay.
Uh, this is something that they've made. Vice President Kamala Harris, President Biden, of course, they made mental health a priority, and they've called it a crisis. And it is a crisis,
It is a crisis.
as you
Absolutely.
said.
It's a crisis.
So good policy. Timothy Williams says good policy. And David Youngblood says all we have to do is look around and know mental health coverage is desperately needed as basic federal policy. It's as simple as that, Austin.
Exactly. Exactly. Well stated, to the point, and yes.
Yeah. So a lot went on at the White House yesterday,
Yeah. Yeah.
except for you didn't come.
Yep. I regret that, but next time you gotta let me know when you're over there next time.
I mean, we could have really had a good time after. We still would have had time to go over to the briefing room, and but have it your way. Yeah, people asking. I mean, so and there were people asking for you.
Sure. Yeah. Casey, you
In
talk so
fact,
much
there
crap.
was, there's this one young lady was asking. What was her name?
I have no
Uh,
idea who you're talking about.
you know who I'm talking about. We talked. We sat with her before. Oh man,
I
she
don't
was like,
know.
"Where's Austin?"
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh boy, I can't think of her name, but she had her hair done up really nice in the same colors as her dress. It was really,
Really?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
on the tip of my tongue, but I just have no idea who you're talking about.
You know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about. I can't think of her name though. But you sat with her the whole time we was there the last time.
Morgan.
Morgan. That's right.
Morgan Woods. Who is Morgan with?
Listen,
I
that
forgot. I forgot who Morgan is with. Yeah, yeah.
oh
But
boy.
nice, sharp young lady.
That's I think pretty much what she said about you. Except she
Hmm.
replaced the lady part with the man. I mean, see, these are the things you miss when you don't come to the White House.
And this part of the show, did this last like 3 minutes or 2 minutes? Had to be called "Don't Let It Be Known."
I mean, Erica came out to say hello, and Erica is just a wonderful person.
Yep. I, I
That whole
actually I
White
actually
House
spoke
staff.
to I actually spoke to Erica early this week about I've got three upcoming client events, one in New York in September and two in November, one here and one in New York, and want to get letters of greeting from the president.
Mm.
So I gave her a call, and she's going to forward my email to some people. So waiting to hear back. But Erica, it's just good people
Yeah.
all around.
Yeah, we're talking about Erica Lowe, who is she is the liaison for the Black media at the she's the director, I should say, of the African American media at the White House. That whole staff, Erica and all of them, this wonderful
Hmm.
folks over there at the White. They knew what they were doing. They hired that staff over there.
Absolutely.
Wonderful
Yeah, and
folks.
they're all engaged with the Black press. Um, they keep us up to date on everything that is happening. Um, I've never had any difficulty interviewing anyone in the administration that I've wanted to interview, and it's all because of Erica. So thanks, Erica.
Yep. Yep. And David Youngblood says Erica is always responsive and is a supporter of the Black press. That
Absolutely,
she
absolutely.
is. It's not just lip service. They have that whole staff. Like I said, everybody who works on that team there, from those above her and those below her, they all are so cool, and we appreciate them, and we appreciate being over there, hanging out sometimes, Austin.
Next time I will be there.
All right, all right. Otherwise, we're gonna have to call Barrington up.
Yeah,
Yeah. Barrington ready to burn the White House down.
I
So
know.
we can't. Yeah. Forget Barrington. He gonna burn it down. So, but thanks a lot, Austin. And one last note: Greer mentions the Commanders were sold. Austin, Magic Johnson, part owner.
Yes. Great
Um,
news. Great
that's
news.
great
Great
news,
news.
right?
Yeah, I just have such admiration for Magic. Professional basketball player. I'll never forget sitting in my apartment in New York when he tearfully announced that he was that he had AIDS, and I remember
HIV.
sitting there, tears just falling, saying, "Oh my God, Magic's going to die." I mean, literally
Didn't we
back
all
then,
think that?
AIDS was a death sentence.
Yes.
And it was for far too many. Thank God, Magic was a celebrity. Thank God, Magic, even at that time, was a millionaire and had access to the best experimental drugs that were available to treat those with HIV positive or who had, were AIDS, had
He's
AIDS.
yeah. He said
And look at them now.
yeah, healthy as an ox.
Yeah.
He said that he never missed his medication and he never stopped doing what the doctor told him,
Exercising,
exercising.
dieting. Yep.
He said he did everything to the book. Because he thought it was a death sentence too, and he said his only chance, if he had a chance, was to take his medication and do everything the
Mhm.
doctors told him to do. If you never watched or haven't watched, a few years ago, ESPN's series, that 30 for 30 series, that one I watched on Magic Johnson. And because one of the questions I always had was, why did Cookie stay with him?
Mhm. Mhm.
Once, and he had determined when he was going to go home and bring that news home with him. He had already anticipated her packing up. He had put plans in place to help her to leave and everything else. He was going to give her whatever she wanted, because he just knew. I mean, what's the point of staying with him at that point? Because
Mhm.
again, back then,
Death
1991,
sentence. Death
1992, it
sentence.
was a death sentence. And so, and he knew his past had caught up with him.
Yep.
And so, he anticipated her go, and she answered a question that I had for years when I saw that 30 for 30 documentary a few years ago. Like, why did she stay? And I'm not gonna give away the answer if anybody's planning on watching that, but it's really
I
compelling.
have to watch
And
that.
yeah,
I've always had that question as well.
and it's when she said it, first of all, the way she said it, you believed her 100%,
Mhm.
and you understood. At least I did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understood. It made 100% sense.
Mhm.
So you gotta watch it if you never watched it. I hate promoting anything ESPN, but that one
I've got to
is
watch
one
that.
to
I've not seen
watch
that.
on Magic Johnson. I think it debuted in 2018 or 2017, something like that. But it's one to watch. Magic Johnson's road with HIV, really incredible. And now, like, his the disease is undetectable in him.
Yep. Wow. Wow.
So,
Wow. And before we
and
go, I want to. I don't know if my boss Denise Rolock Barnes is listening, but if you are, Denise, I want to acknowledge your scolding of me when I was on the show last Friday. Denise. So I thought I was being very discreet because my throat was bothering me. So I thought I was being very discreet in putting two ginger chews in my mouth and just sucking on them, talking. And I'm looking up in the corner of my screen, and I get this stern message from Denise, like she's my mother, stop chewing on air unless Stacy or Greer have told you it's okay. And I almost choked. So Denise Rolock Barnes, if you're listening, I apologize. And on today's show, I did not chew. In fact, I did my best not to breathe, Denise.
Wow. Look, he's afraid of Denise.
Exactly.
Somebody else he's afraid of.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, he didn't chew today, Denise. Maybe we have him again. We'll watch that. We'll watch
that. We
very
gotta watch
carefully.
that
Exactly.
inappropriate behavior.
Thanks a lot, Austin. Thank
All right,
you
buddy.
all for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
All right.